Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to take a second pass with a better phrase. For those of you who are brand new, welcome to the ride. I'm calling this episode The Black Apple Tree. And it came out of a great conversation with a friend of mine. Because I finally put a term to it that seems like what it is. But I did an episode called Alien Consciousness some time ago. And what it amounted to, and this is how it came out with my friend Lauren. She said, look, do you believe in aliens? And I said, well, because she's like, hey, she's a brilliant person. So she says, look, I'm talking about, aliens from outer space, as well as these now super popular interdimensional theory. And so I'm sitting there thinking about it. I thought, well, we've covered, I've done episodes on everything. You guys know that. And so, there are the gray alien theories, reptile aliens. I mean, everything out there is up for grabs, right? The ones that look like us, one that look like Norwegians, one that looks like Tesla's ex-wife. Elon Musk's ex-wife, excuse me. How dare I defame the man? But alien consciousness, I meandered around an idea, and here's what's interesting. It's come up in other people's videos, other people's comments, and I'm going to give it a name. And after I give it this name, which is Black Apple, it's going to give you a defense mechanism and a paradigm to wrap this moment up. Which is, what if there was it could be all within the human body. We're going to talk about that. And there's something else we have to watch out for, because I think there's good information that might come from this location. But it's going to be interesting. I have to personally listen to my own mind and study what I'm about to describe to really discern it. Perhaps an additional video on this. But it goes something like this. Aliens that come from outside is sort of a neat metaphor for how you would handle what they could do to you. You got your own world, your own house, your own planet, and here comes some aliens. Well, they're not from here, even though they might have visited. Maybe they consider this one of their properties, but they would come and go, and they go back to their place, which is really advanced. If you were scared of aliens, you could just, crawl up and just in a ball in your basement and go, well, I can't wait till they leave. And obviously, if you're good with them, you would take from them what you like and leave everything else behind. That metaphor, that real life on point moment is going to be metaphorical for us in this other conversation. But alien consciousness talks about something that is hidden around us, an interdimensional life force that mimics so many life forms that we have on planet Earth. How many of you have seen a whale with a little tiny fish that swim by his mouth? He's eating plankton, and they're eating perhaps plankton as well. This happens a lot. I mean, you'll have a smaller creature hangs out with a bigger creature. They're not predators of each other, and so they share the scraps. Okay. We also know of barnacles that attach themselves to a ship hull, and man, they're eating like crazy. Whatever they eat, it's just being washed over them constantly. It must be awesome to be on a ship if you're a barnacle. But even if you're a barnacle on a rock on the coast, the water is constantly churning, keeping life ever new for you. And you're eating constantly, the best you can eat. A lot of life lives in, lagoons and areas where water fluctuates regularly. Okay. Well, imagine we had something like that, but doesn't have a body. If it has a body, we're unaware of it. I mean, even if something can remain invisible to our eyes, if you reach up to touch your face, and then way before you get to your face, you're hitting something else, and your face starts to depress, you got something invisible on you. We don't experience that. Thank God. Can you imagine how bizarre the world would be? I got 5 of them on me. Help me out. No, what I'm talking about is a pure consciousness being, race of beings, species of beings. I probably shouldn't say race, but a species of beings that might feed off of the electrical emotions or other properties, maybe not electrons, maybe other things that we don't sense at all, we don't acknowledge unless you believe in a soul. Perhaps there's some, frequency coming off the soul, and these things feed off of it. And they don't really have a massive, perhaps they don't have a massive context for our life, but one thing they do understand is our thoughts. And they simply pattern recognition, wow, when that person had that type of thought, this huge meal came out of them and I ate it. Now, imagine that every single emotion that we have, which is this infinite complex choice from happiness to sadness to indifference to melancholy, whatever you got. Loneliness, you're totally excited. Maybe you're on a motorcycle going 130 up the highway in the middle of the night. That kind of adrenaline rush. Every single variation in our emotion could be a variation in the meal taste, quote unquote, for these individuals, for this race, this species, this interdimensional thing that's around us. Now, am I just making this up? No. If you saw the alien consciousness, I gave you a geographical analogy or way to discern the difference between the two. And what's interesting is I think every single one of you hearing my voice will be able to immediately apply this to your life and immediately go, whoa, this is cool on one level and a little freaky on another. So this has to do with who owns one of your thoughts. Now, the sterile definition is you obviously own all of your thoughts. That's the sterile definition, because by the time you accept it into your consciousness and roll it around your brain, it is your thought, is your possession. But now, if I said to you, tell me an empirical truth about your life. I've asked you that question. I'm one human being on this side, you're on the other side. Tell me something that you love. That's an easy one. That you really, really love. Now, when someone says, well, I love my mother. I love rock climbing. I love surfing. I like sitting around smoking cigars. I love it. I like it. Whatever. Here's an analogy and I think a specificity of that thing, that thought manifesting in you and coming out of you as a word. And the gurus of India have a science around at least this first half. They may have a science around the second half, but I've never heard any other human being talk about this, so I'm excited. The way that the Hindus, or at least I had it explained to me through a guy here, an American Caucasian guy who had studied Hindus at a super duper level. He went over there and lived there for a long time. And he said that they talk about the fact that you create the sort of communication bubble that is what you're about to say. You manifest it in your heart, and it comes up out into your vocal cords, and then it is communicated. And they have a lot of different observations of how love and hate, and they use their mechanism to talk about how you would control the manifestation such that you don't color yourself dark to other people. You know, you get into those situations where you've had a bad day and so everything sucks and everything you talk about is a complaint. And then you eat or you relax and you're like, oh my God, well, the world isn't actually so bad. You know, it's like, yeah, you needed to poop. Okay. Now, let's go to the other side of the game. Because that is really warming, right? Whatever you believe is what you believe. And if I ask you and it comes from you, we're having this almost pure truth conversation about what you believe and what you don't believe. Doesn't mean that what you believe is true is true. It's just, it is true that it's coming out of you. But now I leave the room or wherever we are. Now you're sitting there with your thoughts. Now you're by yourself, and you could just be sitting on your sofa in your front room and no one's talking to you. You got a whole house full of kids and family. No one's talking to you. Just for that moment. They're not ignoring you or anything. And you're sitting around thinking about things, and maybe you think about things that are functional. Hey, could you guys pick up your toys here? Could you pick up your food over there? Honey, could you bring me a glass of water? It's just utilitarian statements, not much to it. Maybe what you desire is driven by this other thing. But let me take you back to your adolescence, your pre-adolescent stage of perhaps dating someone for the very first time, going steady, as we used to say, right? Well, there's nothing more tender in this world than a young person dating another young person and trying to sort out all those emotions. Sadly, parents don't talk to their kids about this phase, which is why I always say, make sure you parent from the very beginning. Don't wait to parent later on. Those kids running around the restaurant, and then the parent, realizes that everybody else has got kids that behave. These parents have taught their kids, hey, the restaurant's a playground. And so they jump up and they try to discipline their child for the very first time in a restaurant. And the kid's like, what are you doing? You don't discipline. Wait, when we're in the car, we do whatever we want. You never say anything. When we're home, we do whatever we want. And you're just a pushover parent. You're not even a parent. You're like a feeding guardian. Some parents have a lot of bullshit philosophies for being lazy parents. Don't be one, okay? But when you fall in love, you're usually left to your own devices. Parents usually don't talk to their kids about falling in love with other people too early because they don't want it to happen too early. Maybe you don't need to talk to them at 3 years old, but maybe around 10, 11, 12, you're starting to get close. Why don't you prime them for a couple of years before they hit 13? My kid jumped off at 13, hardcore. You're sitting there, and for the first part of your relationship, it usually goes grand. You're just in euphoria. Having another human being love you as much as you love them has got to be one of the most amazing states of mind you could possibly be in, especially when you can't define with words how much you love somebody else, and they seem to have the same problem. You can't hold hands enough. You can't sit next to each other enough. You can't spoon close enough at night, depending on how old you are, of course. But when you're young, you get to see these people usually at school. Maybe if you're lucky, they live in your neighborhood. Maybe you get a chance to see them at the swimming pool in the summertime. Whatever. You're obviously scrapping for every ounce of being together you possibly can, which I think was beautifully portrayed in season 3 of Stranger Things, by the way. But then, the euphoria sort of calms down. It doesn't go away, but it calms down. The what they say, infatuation stage. Those things don't have to end. I know some people have been married for 20, 30 years who are still utterly infatuated with each other, which is a beautiful thing. But let's say you go through this phase that I went through horribly, which was jealousy. My first high school sweetheart, bless her soul, she had to put up with me. We dated for a year and a half. And again, just like I just described, her and I were together constantly. But then eventually you have other hemispheres of your life. Now, I was pretty introverted when I wasn't extroverted, so I was really good at being introverted and really good at being extroverted. And so when I went home, I just jumped into my computers, jumped into my artwork, all this other stuff, and this just sounds idiotic, but the more idiotic it sounds, you're going to understand the second part of this, which is that I thought she would do the same thing. She went hang out with her friends she had before she met me. Oh, go figure, right? I was this just very immature kid at that point in that particular realm of life, right? And so we would go to her friends' parties, and I was always there, and almost no one else had a boyfriend, so I'm just sitting there, and it was sort of like I enjoyed that. I could enjoy it, but I was always like, okay, let's get out of here so we get a few minutes to ourselves before I have to take you home to your parents' house. And then, just like clockwork, my mind, here I am, a writer now. Go figure, I had this engine a long time ago. My mind would start writing stories about where she was when she wasn't with me. After a year went by, there were people that realized it's one of those situations where someone doesn't pay attention to a girl until she just gets super confident with herself, and like her and I are great, and then she becomes really appealing to the other guys, and so guys would sort of try to get close to her and stuff. And I was noticing a little bit of this. It really didn't happen that much, to be honest, but I would sit there, and this happens in adult fashion as well. But what I didn't realize, and I realized this just in this last 12 months, that's what's great about doing this show, man. You figure out all kinds of stuff about yourself. But I distinctly will see things like almost, virtual reality. It's out there in front of me. It's in my mind's eye. I'm not crazy yet. And it's like something is presenting a scene to me based on partial truths and partial, like possibilities of things that could happen. And because this thing is wired into your brain, it kind of knows what you're willing to believe about a particular subject. And I don't know how it works. I don't know if it's, now Freud would probably say it's like an id echo or something like that. Some of your inner child echoing out this ultimate constant fear. I don't know. I really wish I could talk to that guy. But what I found was this. If I allow in this external presentation to my life as oh my gosh, I need to react to this. Yeah, that's probably happening. You're probably right. Now, there's another side to this, because I have some intuition that's killer, and a lot of you do. And it's one of these sort of, it's going to be a love-hate filtering system. I'm going to teach you I'm going to teach you what I do to filter this input, because there's a good source out there too, which I think is the spirits of those who want to help us. It could be your relatives, it could be someone you never met, something could be God, who knows. But this is where we get to the name of the episode. Here's the analogy I'm going to give you that you can repeat to yourself, to others, and then you can explain this to them, and depending on how open-minded they are. Metaphorically speaking, what this force is doing is it's trying to ruin your life. It's trying to make you react. It's trying to get you in trouble. It's trying to get a rise out of you. It doesn't care if you really go and do anything about your feelings, as long as you just have them. So maybe you're sitting there going, I know she's not cheating, or I know he's not cheating, or whatever the concern is. It could be just, I don't know if they love me anymore. They used to say I love you a lot, and now it's calming down, and does that mean something? Whatever it is. I want you to envision a tree. And on that tree are black apples. Every single time one of these super negative, manipulative visions come into your life, this doesn't matter if I'm not correct about being an interdimensional species, or if it's just something built into us. This is how it happens. One, let's remember, when I ask you something, it comes from inside out. I'm getting what your true beliefs are from the inside out. As you express things to yourself, it comes from that location in your chest, in your heart, perhaps your soul. These other things come from outside to you. And what I want you to envision in your brain is a defense mechanism, because wrapping something in a paradigm of physical tangibility really helps when you have to battle these sort of things. And this could help you battle addiction. This could help you battle every single thing on planet Earth. You could be suffering from PTSD, and this is a great way to deny in these negative things and to preserve what's inside you. But imagine a tree is right in front of you when this negative stuff starts coming in, and the branch it's intelligent. It just kind of bends right towards you, and it's got this gorgeous black apple on it. You never seen one before, but it's black. It's just perfect, right? What it's trying to do is say, here, eat this. And if you pull it off, then you've started to accept it as your thought when it ain't your thought. And if you bite into it, you swallow it inside you. And you will add it to your otherwise pure self on the inside. You will maybe perhaps believe something or choose to believe something because of your actions of taking this from the outside in. And you'll say, oh, it's like the Shakespeare play Othello. Iago is his buddy. Iago is the black apple tree. If you're writing, maybe this will help you sort some things out. But what did Iago do? Iago continually told the king that his wife was cheating on him. And every single time he didn't have his wife in his mind's eye, in his vision, Iago was there to plug up his brain with a bunch of fakeness. The second that she showed any affection towards another man or helped another man, Iago was right there, and that's one of the guys she's sleeping with. Othello kills his wife because he let all this black apple matter inside of himself. He became dark because you are what you eat, right? And then, of course, he finds out Iago's lying. Bad news, man. Bad news. Now, some of us might experience betrayal from someone, and for whatever reason, we choose to negotiate and come up with a solution. We're done with that, right? Yeah. All right. I've been in relationships where I dated someone long term, and it really wasn't going well for months. You know, we said hi to each other and all that stuff. Sometimes we lived in the same place, sometimes we didn't. And so when you're far away from someone and you know, you're thinking, God, this whole thing isn't working out. I'm never going to end up with this person. If you had an option, you might take it to have a moment of stimulation from someone else and they just beat you to it or whatever. So when it comes in the door and you're like, yeah, I was with somebody else the other night, whatever, you know, I only see you once a week. I spend 7 days or 6 days alone a week. Yeah, this other thing happened. Okay, you don't have to shit all over yourself, right? You can keep going with life and go, okay, well, do we want to get past this or should we just call it quits? And you're like, well, no, you know what? That other person made me appreciate you way more than I ever did. I'm sorry I did that, but it was obviously of value to see. Move on. So I've actually made that choice myself. And so then in my brain, I could say that person's a cheater. They just are. And Hollywood really plays up anything that breaks up a relationship because that's what the global agenda is to break us all up, right? A single income household, because there's only one parent, that's a wet dream for a banker. Us working it out, they hate that. So they want to dramatize and pay for any movies that will make that the eventuality. I just completed a film that actually has a breakup, but it wasn't a marriage. So let's reiterate one more time. When you're sitting by yourself and you're taking in visions, you could just be lying in bed and the ceiling becomes your little projector. You're sitting in your car, you're driving, it's like autopilot when you drive for 10 years, you're in jam traffic for 45 minutes to 2 hours, and so you got a lot of time to think about things, you can get all upset. What you need to do is deny the apple. What you have to do, in my opinion, is to tell yourself, you'll get mesmerized by it, right? I've been practicing this now for at least 6 months, and I can't remember when I first turned it on, but I'll watch the movie, man. I was just like, oh, and it's amazing. It's elaborate. It's totally believable until you wake up, and then you're like, well, that's bullshit. That's all fake. That isn't reality. If you're having paranoia about another person, here's one way to say it too. I refuse to take in this negative characterization of someone I love or someone I like, my buddy or my lover or whatever. He or she deserves to be protected from this crap. I'm not eating an apple, a black apple, and polluting my vision of someone when they don't deserve it. Because, if there's any afterlife whatsoever and there's some point where we meet each other, you're going to see them for exactly who they were. And perhaps, maybe, our history will be evaluated. I doubt it. But if it happens, you're going to, I thought you cheated on me. Well, I thought you did too. Oh, gosh. How did we get these ideas in us? Oh, that a little thing that was on us when we were back down on Earth. Okay. High five. Boom. We didn't do anything to each other. But what's important is you don't wait till you die to figure out that information. We want to live a great life when we're here. One of the things I've definitely seen from very diplomatic human beings, not just diplomats, but diplomatic human beings, is when someone accuses someone of something, And that person who's listening to this rumor, this gossip about another person's bad actions, will do one of two things. We'll do a lot of things, but at least one of two things that are it's very wise. It's very good for us. One, they realize that every story has two sides. That's huge. Two, they may have a motive to crap on another human being. Somehow they believe that if someone else loses, they win. Not true, right? Not true. But there is, in my opinion, in my experience, and I actually have a third one too, which I'll share with you guys, which I think we all have. I believe that we have massive intuition if we are open to it and open to spirits of those that have passed, those that may have never been born. They're just out there. And you're in a creative situation, let's just say, or you're trying to make a good business decision, or you met somebody new, and you're trying to feel your gut, as the Asians like to say. I love that. I love the fact they say that. But your gut is just going, get away, right? Do you ever introduce someone to your pet, and your pet's just like, this is a bad person, and then you're like, I don't understand. Then in a couple weeks, you understand. While your pet was totally intuitive about them being a good person or a bad person, because your pet's seeing a lot more frequencies off the human being. So here's the way to parse it. If you're getting this big negative story about something, a reason to be cautious, something that makes you fearful. Think about if you had bills due and you didn't have a lot of money. Well, they can just feed on you all day long. That bill, oh my God, you're going to get kicked out on the street, or you're going to lose your car, you're going to lose your job, you're going to just be homeless. That bill. All right. You don't want that. But that's negative. That's a black apple, and it's very apparent it's a black apple. When you were looking for advice on life, a lot more context to advice. And, again, it's your gut feeling. It's your gut feeling about something. You are assessing very intentionally, almost wholly the insides, right? You're taking your insides and you're using them to analyze something. But you will have these sort of whims that come out of nowhere that'll say, like you're sorting through all the options on your little options list, or your little mechanism, your little tricorder that says good or bad. And you're touring it through all the different settings. And sometimes you'll put it on a setting, good, and you get this quaff out of the universe. That's true. That person is good. You can trust that person. And maybe used car salesman, and my dad sold used cars. But you get to some sleazy person who's just weird. They feel like other people that have done you wrong. And sometimes you get that, well, this person just feels like that person, they're actually genuine. Or you'll get that feeling, run away. That's not necessarily one of these big dramatized things that can happen to your mind that is really going for the blood. The black apple wants blood. It wants destruction. And it's sad that this mechanism seems to present almost unanimously negativity. Now, some religious people might call those demons, and I wouldn't necessarily try to dissuade you from that. But just remember to put it in a different context with words that you are definitely accustomed to. We have a phrase called daydreaming. Daydreaming is when this happens. You can daydream about something wonderful, winning the lottery, getting the career of your dreams, and those are good. And that's sort of that other flavor that I'm going to get to here. Tony Robbins always tells you to envision yourself a year from now and be very serious about it. And then 5 years and then 10 years. And then what he does is he says, look, make that scenario as realistic as possible such that you can get it. But also, he wants to say, okay, what is the goal that you want in life? And let's just say, for me, it's to sell movies constantly, write them and sell them constantly. I don't care about, I can do TV too or whatever, but right now I'm film. All right. Well, you write a bunch of films, you wait for them to get evaluated, you hope to God that a studio is ready to buy that kind of script. Boom, there it goes. And then, of course, there's the silver screen moment where after 300 people work really hard for a year and a half, 2 years, plus you get to sit in a screening room and see your name up on there. And you're like, I did it. I finally did it. Hope everyone loves the film. That's the only thing you can really hope for in the end. But then if you get celebrated for doing something that you love, then you can get paid to do it 24/7. Well, that's great. So then what are the benefits of your goal? For me, would be to do what I love constantly. Doesn't matter how old I get, I can always crank out a new script. Always, always, always. Maybe take a break and do a book, or, whatever. Maybe I invent a television show, whatever it is. I'll always have a job as long as my brain is what I'm using to get the job and not my physique, right? But when and I guess it could be called daydreaming, but daydreaming I always chalk up to sort of an involuntary moment, which is where the black apples come from. You're just sitting there and you're bored. I mean, not even bored. You're just kind of listening to the universe. All this negativity comes in. So you deny it. You acknowledge it's there. And what you need to say is, that's not my thought. If someone makes you think something bad about someone, you need to say, I think you need to say it out loud, quite frankly, but it's almost between you and your creator too. And you just simply say, I refuse to judge that person, to accuse that person of something they didn't do. Because what I just saw, they didn't do. Now, you might be reliving a moment of betrayal, and that's a little bit different. That's a memory. And you're speculating as to what happened. Like if your spouse said, oh, yeah, I went to this hotel and I slept with this other person and we spent 6 hours having sex, and they actually told you that, well, then you weren't there. And so you might envision in your brain and hurt yourself all day long with that event. That's dangerous, because I think the species is right there to write that script for you. You need to do yourself a solid and just put it past you. If that kind of situation breaks your relationship, which it probably would, if you're really committed, then you need to just totally get rid of that person, probably physically move to some other location in your area, whatever you got to do. You got to completely cut that out of your life, because it's just going to consume invaluable seconds, minutes, days, hours, years, whatever in your life, and you deserve to live. And you have to go see my episode on betrayal. Now, the other one, which I won't spend a tremendous amount of time on, but it is when I intentionally, I guess, when I'm writing. When I'm writing, it comes to me in two different ways. One, circumstances will just happen in front of me, and any of you who've ever had a creative moment, you know this is how it works. You're just sitting there, and all of a sudden, a big chunk of this fictional thing, if you're a musician, it's a riff, comes to you, right? You're usually going to bed at night and you're like, oh my God, I have to get up and figure out this riff. Keep a little recorder next to you and just sing it into the recorder and go back to bed. But I'll see these chunks of films, and for me, it is like sneaking into the future. It's sneaking into the movie theater and seeing it completed. And so I just rip it off. No one else is there with me, so I assume I'm one of the only writers going for this. So you steal as much as you can. In the analogy of Jurassic Park story by Michael Crichton, they had some DNA from a mosquito in some amber. They pulled that out, and then they were missing some of the DNA due to damage or whatever, and so they put frog DNA in there, and of course that's the whole story about it changing sexes and all that stuff, right? Brilliant idea. I mean, utterly freaking brilliant idea, even if dinosaurs didn't exist. So what's important in this process of acknowledging this mechanism, and I assure you, it just depends on how balanced you are as an individual. If you don't have this issue where you have suspicions every once in a while or whatever, you're just, I don't know, it's almost not chartered. It's just negative imagination, I guess you could say. It's just so incredibly elaborate, and it pushes every single button. It's almost like a lock and key. You have locks in your mind that will only unlock these bad emotions if the key is perfect. And what is amazing is this key is always perfect. It always gets right in, unlocks the door, and goes, look at this. And you're like, I don't want anything to do with that. But you don't want to become shut off to the outside influences of the universe at the same exact time you're trying to protect yourself against these things. I think it's very distinct circumstance. But I made the episode Alien Consciousness, and then I think I was following, I think her name's Lynn Collins. She's the actress from John Carter. And she has her own spiritual enlightenment channel on the web. She has her own domain. But she gives away little segments of this in her Instagram feed routinely. And so I saw this, and she was talking about this exact thing. She's into a lot of things I'm not into, like tarot cards and all the astrology and stuff, which I don't like at all. But she's very nice to listen to. So anyway, she was talking about this, and all of a sudden she hit on something that was exactly what this is. But we're all struggling to give it some words, Now imagine you're talking to a friend. Your life is good. You figured this technique out, or you never had this problem to begin with. But your friend across the table, or on the phone or whatever, starts to talk about, he's doing that. She's doing this, or I fear she's doing that, or he's doing this, or whatever. It could be your business partner, it could be anything. You can now say to them, well, maybe not. Make sure you don't eat that black apple. And they're going to say, what the hell are you talking about? You're going to say, you're seeing things, right? You're seeing things and you're rationalizing things. You've created these stories that may or may not be true, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt until we find out if this is actually occurring, because it's important. It's like that old saying, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. This is pretty much right along the lines of that. This is an advanced course in assuming something. I think the definitive thing is that, and here's the thing. The definitive thing is that this comes from the outside in, and it's all negative. As I have shared this concept with at least a dozen people in the last 6 to 8 months, whenever I made that episode and figured this out for myself, everyone I've talked to goes, oh my God, this does happen to me. And that's interesting that we don't allow these things to occur. Now, we're in a state in the universe, where all kinds of bad things are being revealed. And I don't mean moon missions. That's child's play compared to some of the horrible things that are happening. But we are being lured into, and we're feeding each other these sort of maybe totally true, maybe only even partially true. Maybe we're saying someone's evil and we think we're saying it's level 10, but we're only really describing level 4 of their actual 10. They do things way beyond hideous, and we don't know. It's still better for us to stay in reality as much as we possibly can, because, if the world were to get real hot, we know that there are forces, and I don't mean to get off on this, I'll just do a little tangent on this. There are forces that have pretty much admitted they're trying to create civil war in several countries. They've got it going in Paris and Hong Kong and a bunch of other places that I don't know, but definitely they're trying to do it in America as much as they possibly can, getting us to fight over issues. Well, this mechanism, if not controlled, could be the fueling force, and has nothing to do with George Soros writing a check. It's just, I've given you things to be suspicious about, because I know how the mind works and it eats itself up with this mechanism. You'll just go on autopilot the whole time. Now, I have had situations in my lifetime, and I have to say, this is where it gets tough for myself personally. I've definitely had at least one individual in my lifetime that I was in love with who has lied to me on the ultimate level more than once. And I will be in location 1. And we lived, let's say, 5 miles from each other, something like that. And I was in where I live, and I remember I was feeling, and this happened more than once, And you're like, why did you hang out with this person more than once? That's what love does, right? But one evening, it's late. I don't know, it's probably 11:30 my time. Here I'm up at 12:30. And I had this just really sinking feeling that something was really wrong, that I was being betrayed. And it was heavy. I mean, it was like, it wasn't so much this projection thing. It just entered my consciousness like someone just whispered it in my ear and said, she's not even home. And that meant that she's with somebody else. And I was like, okay, this is going to eat me up all evening, and I got a lot of shit I got to do. So I don't know if you're like that, but like, you know, if someone's preoccupying your mind or something's preoccupying your mind, you have to go and handle it because you can't be creative and you know, you won't create positivity if you're being paranoid about negativity. And so I decided to hop in my car. I felt like crap doing this because I thought, I am accusing this person. I'm allowing this accusation to become true. But this was like, it felt like a ton of bricks. I mean, seriously, it felt like someone filled my heart full of like a really dready kind of feeling. And so I cruised over, and all I want to do is just drive by her place. Her car is always parked there. It's kind of stalkerish, which, you know, was sort of sad. Now, I've gone over there and just knocked on the door and hopped into bed with her, so it's not exactly out of this world. But anyway, I drove over, and sure enough, the car's gone. And thing is, I had text messages on my phone. I'm home. I'm gonna go to bed, whatever. I've even had the phone call once where I was actually looking at the empty parking space. All lights are off, and this person's telling me that they're home, and I can tell they're in the car. I'm like, okay, get out of your car and go inside. Well, why do I have to do that? Because I don't think you're home. I am home. Well, I'm in your driveway, and then I'm an asshole, right? How dare you? You know, it's like, dude, just tell me the truth. I'm totally an adult here. If we want to move on, hey, it won't be happy news, but at least it's a lot better than trying to hang on to someone who's lying to you. And eventually it didn't work out, you know, of course. But the reason why I bring this up is obviously multiple fold, but imagine this is, for whatever reason, a reality for us. And again, it could be totally within our own consciousness, and this is just simply how it portrays itself to us from the outside in. Part of me thinks there's validity to an outside species. One, because, come on, is this place completely barren? Just because we can't see it, it doesn't exist? I don't know, right? But if it was in your head, why doesn't it give you the sensibility that it's in your head? If I ask you if you love somebody that you love, you're going to feel like that comes from the inside, not from the outside. So when this distinctly comes from the outside, at least for me and all the friends I've ever talked to, it's first a little freaky, but second, almost immediately, you're in control. And that's what's cool. Nothing manipulates you anymore. My fear, one of my fears, is if someone's into substance abuse as a result of this paranoia eating them up, or these negative emotions eating them up, if you're impaired mentally, I don't know if you have the wherewithal to stop reacting to this stuff and take inventory and go, that isn't going on. That's not truth. That's just some fiction that's being projected at me to get a reaction out of me, to make me ruin my life, you know. Now, does that mean that we can't sit down and discern something that is going on? You do get the text message that someone's home. They call you from their house, but they never go inside, but they always do. They always do. You always hear their footsteps. You hear the gate slam. You hear the footsteps on the concrete, then the footsteps on the hardwood floors, and then there's usually a toothbrushing thing and a bedtime thing, and then you hang up the phone. And that always happens, but this particular time, it was a weird kind of tone of voice, like you didn't want to be too loud in your car because you're not where you're supposed to be, sort of thing. I firmly believe that you have the full capability of analyzing any situation like that with your consciousness, and it will not feel like this other outside process. What I'm really saying the black apple comes from is an involuntary process. You're not participating in this. You're just sitting there watching it. It was presented to you. When we lay our head down at night, hopefully most of you don't suffer from this, but it happens, I think, to everybody who, graduates into life and you have your own world, your own bills and all that stuff. I said a long time ago in a dream episode, and I had one female commenter totally acknowledge this, and I was really, I guess I could say, just super happy to hear someone else acknowledge that this is not something that only I experience. But when you're laying down, you will go from consciousness into the twilight zone and then into dream state. And twilight zone is a real state of mind. That's why he chose it for the name of his show, Rod Serling, when you are sort of halfway between both realms. The one thing that happens to me, which I think could be related to this similar situation, and it should be, if we were in a scientific situation, we're writing all this down, trying to get to the bottom of it, this would be definitely something that needs to be in the paperwork. I haven't had it happen to me recently, and what's fascinating about this is as soon as I acknowledged it on the show, it almost evaporated completely. In fact, I probably haven't had this for a couple of years, to be honest, at least consciously, that I can remember. So what'll happen is this. As you're in the twilight zone, tucked away in your bed, wherever the hell you are, going to bed, you will think of some people in your real life. Could be a person, could be a lot of people. I think for me it happens with one person. But here's what happens, and it's really weird. Your mind will instantaneously manifest a backstory to this person. It will tell a story to you that this person, and usually for me it was always I owed them something. I promised I would do something and I did do it, which is completely atypical of my behavior. And so I would feel this instantaneous sort of, angst that I let somebody down. And it's a very complex packet of storyline. And it seems to manifest itself literally in a split second. And then I'll wake up out of it. And this used to happen a lot, and I would just kind of push it away without actually going, well, wait a minute, that wasn't even true. Okay. And when I started waking up, that's a nice metaphor, started realizing this wasn't true, then I would sit there in bed and I'd smile and go, that's not even happening, right? This thing I'm worried about isn't even happening. It never happened. So here I am having this incredible flutter of angst, if you do think about your bills, when you go through one of those little valleys where money is not coming in as steadily as you need it to, and maybe you got some in the bank, but you don't have enough to cover the next month or whatever, you're not sure where you're getting your money from, you will think about loss. And it becomes this mega flutter in your system. It's almost like butterflies, but they're not. They're sharp little butterfly wings, right? And you'll just have that jolt. And then you realize, I can't think about that. If I think about that, I'm never going to bed. What I kept repeating in the Alien Consciousness episode, which I think is important, and you can say it all day long. You don't have to wait for this thing to occur in order to give yourself a little bit of comfort. And I don't think this is cowarding out. I don't think this is being irresponsible with your emotions whatsoever. In fact, I think it's quite the antithesis, right? The opposite. You tell yourself, when you're getting, especially if you had a good morning, you got some good sleep, you go in your bathroom, you're going to get all ready, spiffed up, your perfect clothes are clean, right? And you go in and you say to yourself every once in a while, not every thought I have are my thoughts. They're not. Sometimes they come from this other source. If you're religious, there's the great analogy that we are taught that the devil is there to mess up your life. And then usually before you die, if you live a fairly decent, length of a life, you'll start to realize it's not the devil sitting around going, big decision here, big decision there. Don't marry that person. Don't get that job. Don't follow that goal. Well, I'm sure that happens too. And I've said this since I was a teenager. I said, look, it's that little whisper in your ear that is telling you, go left, go right. It seems like it has no context. Okay, I'll go left, I'll go right. And again, when I was following, Walt Disney's pin to Bob Gurr in the park, that's exactly what I did, but it was sort of like this weird pull towards him. It was strange. But all those little tiny things that are said to you over time, if you don't acknowledge that they're not your thoughts, you may take some advice that ends up pushing you in the wrong direction. If you think about it, when you're young, the world's euphoric. It's amazing. You haven't learned enough. Well, one, you don't have a hell of a lot of responsibility, but you haven't been completely closed off to the world. You haven't seen the damage that humans do to each other. And so life is a bowl of cherries for quite a while, hopefully. As soon as you get out on your own, you got to get a job, you got to pay your bills, you're trying to sort out all the dreams that you had when you were young. You throw away some old dreams because they were stupid because you were young, and you make new ones when you're older. Why is it that when people get older, they get cynical? I heard that my whole life. Oh yeah, he's an old cynical guy. And I said, well, what does that mean? Oh, well, sometimes when people get older, they think the whole world's falling apart and everything's horrible, no country for old men sort of analogy. And this become, like the old movie, Cranky Old Men, right? Or is it Angry Old Men? Is that what it is? Yeah. And so this thing happens because the world is, at least in America, it's designed to change every 10 years. So whatever music you like, this history, imagine falling in love with like Glenn Miller, the Rat Pack. Rat Pack still gets played every once in a while. That old smooth band music from back in the 30s and 40s, oh my gosh, that stuff is just beautiful. When they did the movie Cocoon back in the day when I was a little kid, they played a lot of that music and it just felt good. Man, my father raised me with that stuff because he was a trumpet player. So it wasn't new to me, but it still just today feels great. It just changes your whole world when you listen to really positive, mega talented music like that. So imagine everything that you like changes. You like those clothes that you have in your closet from the 80s, 90s, or whatever, and now if you wore those in public, you would be laughed out of whatever room you walked into. Or they're snickering behind the scenes at you. What I'm getting at is that life gets harder. Life challenges you. I do think we're supposed to grow. If you told a tomato plant, when it's just putting a few little leaves out the top of the soil, okay, stop. And he's like, what do you mean? I haven't even made any tomatoes yet. Just stop. Just stay right where you are. And the little guy be pissed off. He's like, you get to be a tomato plant, right? Get to do my job, feed human beings with this offspring called tomatoes. Well, we have to see our lives like that every once in a while. If we have a creator of any metaphorical type, any physical type, whatever, I'm sure that we are supposed to grow, learn, and go through these various journeys. That's why I say, look, and I know some of you make choices not to do this, and some of you can't, so I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings, but I think that a complete human being is one, they reach self-realization over and over and over again. That just constantly grows. You find out who you are more and more as time goes on. It's just a journey. It's a beautiful thing. Your belief systems change. You might have been religious when you were younger. You went to science, then you came back to religion and science mixed together, and then you end up something else at the end, some Gnostic dude at the end. But to conquer the challenge of being with another human being obviously it starts off hopefully in some romantic way. I know some countries don't do that, and I respect that. As long as they like what's going on, it's all good. But to then hopefully make love and make some babies and deal with young children and then middle adults and then see them become adults. That's a whole journey into itself as well. It adds a whole bunch of dimension to the human condition. And then they have children and you get to become a grandparent. So you get the joys of a kid, and you're really good at it at this point, hopefully, but you don't have all the tremendous responsibility. And, some folks help raise their grandkids straight up in their house. Hey, go to work, honey. I'm retired. I'll take care of the kids during the day till they get old enough to drive cars and do whatever they want. And you just have this nice little beautiful thing. They look like you a little bit. You see yourself in them. You see your in-laws in them. You see your kids in them. It's just cool. And you see their whole unique pattern. They're different than everybody you've ever met. They're wiser than you sometimes, right? And then, of course, the final chapter, hopefully you're with someone. In my opinion, I think that would be the best part. But one of you is going to probably pass away before the other one. You got to deal with that. And that's sort of a macabre moment, but it's also sort of one of these moments where you appreciate life the most when you lose somebody, right? And then it's your time to go. And hopefully you have a system of belief that will give you a wonderful feeling as you journey out from this world and maybe go meet God, maybe meet all the other spirits, maybe come back again and do this over, maybe take a little break in the green room in between scenes. Maybe you get to pick who you're going to be next. Maybe that's the case. Maybe Shirley MacLaine's right. If nothing else, the black apple distracts you from your life. It's most of you have cell phones. You've experienced this, and hopefully most of the time it's funny. But you'll be tabbing away on your phone, and someone will walk up to you and put their fingers all over your phone and click a bunch of buttons and move things around just to mess with you. Maybe they think you're on your phone too much, or they're just ganking you. They're having fun, right? And you're like, oh, what are you doing, Or you're building something and they knock part of it down or whatever. They set you back. Now, within that context, it could be funny, hopefully. But do we want anything to to set us back any further than life sets us back in general? I don't think so. Now, if you're able to manifest a philosophy of life where you take all those delays and all those interruptions and you can learn something from it all and it's all positive, then man, you have evolved way beyond my genetics. For me, I want to wake up, get my agenda together of all the things I'm working on, which are always half a dozen or more. A bunch of them are almost endless in their requests and their need for me to nurture them, like writing a script. Or building some really complex piece of software or something. But then, I want to be in control. I don't want to lose my day. I mean, imagine you have one of these weird projections that happens to you the first thing when you wake up in the morning. You've been separated from your lover, and nobody wants that to ever happen. But every time you wake up alone, you're like, oh my God, maybe you lost someone in your life that you love, and that's just like right to your chest, right? But you want to, in my opinion, to catch up to this, take control, deal with the emotion that's there, and then get back onto your day and to be as productive as you can possibly be. Just let me throw this other mechanism at you that might work. I haven't tried this personally, but it makes sense based on some of the things that we've really studied about the mind. There's, I could probably make an episode on this, but it'd be boring as hell all by itself. There's a lot of books out there that say that we actually don't multitask as human beings. We do what's called the round robin, where we go in a circle constantly in our brain. Now, sometimes it's so fast that it feels like we're multitasking. But we truly, some autistic people can do it. True autistic Rain Man kids can do this. They've got multiple consciousnesses running at the same time, basically 2 or more processors doing something at the same exact time. So, let's just say that we are relegated to one process at a time. All right. Let's say that you are haunted by a suspicion. It is this projection. You've heard this episode. You're aware of it. But you're finding it a little difficult to take back control. Aha. Have you ever been so busy you can't think about anything else but the thing you're working on? It's a positive thing. Oh my gosh, someone's like, man, you haven't called me in like a week or so. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I never even thought about hurting your feelings because I'm so into this project. I never even thought about making the phone call. Happens to me all the time. People who know me will most often go, where did you go? I mean, I get that all the time. I'm like, oh, I've been in my house. I'm like Willy Wonka, dude. Nobody comes in, nobody comes out. Thank God that Oompa Loompas make good chocolate. Jeez. But what if one of the techniques to mess with this is you fill your processor? You overwhelm it with one of two things. Perhaps it is something positive you're working on. But maybe, so I just told you that if I told you about myself, that if something's really racking me, it will disturb my ability to write a screenplay, because I need to be completely at peace with myself to really sneak in the theater and really, mulch ideas, right? So what I will do next time I have anything overwhelming, which because I've taken control of this mechanism, I don't get this anymore, folks. So I want to give you this gift if this is something that's messing with you, or if it reoccurs, right? But like I said, when I first opened this episode, I said, how do you give yourself the controlling experiment to notice this other accusation, philosophy, hypothesis that the stuff comes from the outside? You say something from the heart, something true. I love apple pie. Love it. I love Dairy Queen. I love my relatives. I love my friends. I love Deep Thoughts Radio. And so if I were to not be able to push out one of these visions, which for me, the chronology is always, I'm just sitting around. And a lot of times it will happen to me when I'm waking up in bed, right? Because I'll go through checking into social media, checking into whatever, emails, listen to voicemails, check my iPad, play a couple little games, and then I'm up. And I've just sort of updated my brain, looked at the news, whatever. And that thing will happen between me getting out of bed and walking into my bathroom. It's that quick. Just boom, something weird happens. In fact, last time it happened, that's exactly where it happened for me. And I walked into my bathroom, and I'm opening my window, letting in the warm air, getting everything all set up. And I just said, those aren't my thoughts. And I have to give the person who was involved in that thought all the benefits of my love for them, that they wouldn't be that kind of person, or wouldn't have been in my life if they were, right? Have you ever been having a conversation where it's just acidic, right? You're just like, look, man, I don't want to talk about Hillary Clinton anymore. I don't want to talk about QAnon anymore, or any of this political crap. It's not that I'm not interested. It's just I've had too much of it recently, right? And so you change the subject. Now, my advice is to, if you're talking to someone else, which is usually the way this happens, definitely say, look, it's not like we can't talk about this. I'm totally open to your ideas and everything, but right now I just had one of those days. I've had one of those weeks or whatever, where this content, I'm in location B, this is location A, and B talks about it all the time, so I'm really trying to escape from B. Can we just watch some baseball, smoke some cigars, watch an old movie? Boom. And that's how you shut it down. And immediately you feel better when that happens. So you can do that completely by yourself. Now, another subject that I can't do a whole episode on, but I got plenty of cigar to talk about it. Here comes your bonus round. Is this notion of talking to yourself. Some people get spooked out by it. I shared a child with another human being, of course, and her mother was always with two brothers. And so the household was never quiet, and so there was never any need to entertain yourself. And I think when you're an only child, this starts to happen, and I think this is where people like me materialize. Now, you can have obviously real large families where, because they're all always talking to themselves, I've heard of plenty of stories of people I met that say, I was always up in my room by myself. And so you can't have that same development within a family. It's just more unique. Usually it's like when you get to 4 kids, this little isolation routine starts to be possible, right? But my kid's mother, when she was young, said, don't talk to yourself. Only crazy people talk to themselves. Now, obviously, there's a bit of a vocational gap there, but it always stuck with me because it angered me that my kid came back and said that to me. And I told her right off the bat, I said, that's not true. Don't worry about that. That's her vision of that. She didn't do that when she was a kid. Just understand her perspective. Maybe look over your shoulder if she can hear you when you do it to yourself, right? When you do it with yourself, right? There's something extremely interesting for the human mind, and really it pertains to how we perceive our souls and that little tiny 3-letter word called sin. This is where it gains a lot of context. Let's just say that much. You will fear, let's just say you have a daydream. It's your dream. You're putting the characters in. You're controlling the scenario in your mind. And, for males, like your typical alpha male protector, you will, this happens to me more than I'd like to admit it. You're a protector. And so if you're with your family or you're just by yourself even, but you see vulnerability in the restaurant or something, we have so much of this gangster mentality horseshit, right? And most of these guys are the nicest people on planet Earth. You just, as soon as you talk to them, they're mean-faced turns to a funny face, and now you're in their clique and it's all good. And they're an ally. They're part of your clan, right? Even if you don't know them. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you a real-world example. Between my house and the restaurant I go to every day for lunch, there was a new guy. We have a big street, big, long street that takes us to the main intersection where we turn out and start heading on the main roads. But there was this guy, very formidable looking, walking his dog, which looked very formidable looking, right down the middle of the street. We have beautiful sidewalks on both sides. And he would just challenge every car. So every car, he wouldn't move. And I had this happen when I watched the space shuttle land here in California. There's 800,000 people watching the space shuttle land, and everyone's trying to leave, and all the highways are out, right? And it was this big blockage, like everything was going slow, and I was like, what the hell is going on? And finally I get up to the blockage, and it's this chick. I don't know what she was, but she was kind of like, she's very tan. She's wearing a bathing suit top, full chaps, and she's riding an Indian motorcycle with the big fat tire in the front, right? And she is just hanging onto this bike and just telling everyone, get the fuck out of my way. And it's this scrawny white guy on a Kawasaki behind her with the banana seat on his thing. He was just kind of behind her like, yep, she's in charge. It was hilarious. So this guy was doing the same thing. And I'm thinking, well, this is Orange County, man. We can't just have this kind of element do its thing. Plus we'll have, 10 SWAT cars on this guy in 10 seconds if we even reported this was happening. It's just the way it rolls around here. You behave is what this town's all about, right? This county of Orange County. And we do behave. It's great. So anyway, I passed him up last week, and I finally just pulled over. I stopped, right next to him in the road. And I rolled down my window, and, he's kind of like, oh, shit, And I said, why are you walking in the middle of the street? And he was like, oh, because I try to keep the dog off the sidewalk. And I said, why do you try to keep the dog off the sidewalk? And he says, well, as soon as he's on the sidewalk, he wants to stop and pee and poop. And I don't want him to right now because he's like training this dog. And he said he was, basically gave me an explanation which said he was training the dog. And I said, whoa, are you a dog trainer? And he's like, well, sort of. And I said, well, are you from around here? Like, do you live around here? Oh, no, I live around the street or around the corner over there. I couldn't quite place it in my brain. Turns out to be one of the nicest guys. Big old smile on his face. He had a very interesting name. It was almost like Maite, but that's a girl's name. But it was something like that, Maitan or something like that. And so I shake his hand. I'm like, hey, well, good to see you. I haven't seen him since. But he now understands he's being noticed for doing this weird thing. But he had a reason, and it made sense in a way that he was like, this dog is not trained, and I don't want him just ruling the dog walking experience by saying, oh, I'm going to smell this, I'm going to pee on that, I'm going to do this. By walking him down the street, he had nothing to mess with. And so the guy had a good explanation. But here's the problem. In the days that I passed him beforehand, it really angered me that this intrusion into the street was going on, because there's only room for 2 cars, and if there's a lot of times we had like 2 or 3 cars, and we're trying to drive around this guy, and of course my brain, he's an asshole, and he thinks he's gonna muscle in with this gangster mentality horse shit, and it ain't gonna fly. It ain't gonna fly. As soon as I met the guy, erase. But I had to take, my projection mechanism gave me all of these scenarios of what kind of person he was. I judged him. I was totally wrong. Once I met him and let truth happen, talking to him was truth. My brain, this projection mechanism, I took the black apple and I went, oh, that's who he is. Oh my gosh, we're going to take care of that guy. Ridiculous. I was ashamed of myself. And so this will happen in public places where someone's pretending to be hard. And they're pretending to be hard because they're big cowards inside, big chickens inside. Doesn't mean they, can't throw down and knock the crap out of you. It's just, that's why they're so sensitive, is that they're afraid. And so what's interesting about it is when you see the public and you see this hard element in America, California, it's all over the place, right? You got the scrawniest kids on planet Earth walking around like, I don't know, like they're He-Man or something. It's really strange, and you're just like, God, you're one fight away from maybe crawling under a rock your whole life, because you realize you just don't have it, kid. Just be funny, be, charismatic with your life, and you'll never worry about anything. You'll avoid all conflict because you're the center of the party, man. Everyone's looking forward to you coming, But what was doing that to me? What does that to me in public? And there's a lot of you dudes that are exactly the same way. Women, you're exactly the same way. But you may not take an aggressive stance with threat. You take a get the hell out of Dodge, stance. I can only grab my kids and get them out of here, And most of us should take that stance. It's usually the best case, right? Don't sit around trying to be Mr. Tough Guy, because it often won't work out, right? There's always somebody bigger. So we all know we have instincts. And, it was a good friend of mine who shared with me a very challenging moment in her life. And the saddest part was, I've mentioned this once before, but no one knew she was going through this experience, because the first thing that happened to her was she ran out of money. And the first thing, as a result of running out of money, was their cell phone died. She couldn't pay for the bill. So she couldn't contact any of us. She couldn't even, I don't know. She might have been able to power it up, drag the numbers out, and then make a phone call through a payphone or something, or use someone else's cell phone. But she is a very tough, formidable woman who just, her attitude is, I'll take care of it, because she always has. But she shared with me an experience where, I think she actually told me like 4 weeks. She was in Los Angeles, just in the heart of Los Angeles, okay? And she said she took pictures of herself after she recovered, and I saw her, she's perfectly fit, let's put it that way. In a normal situation, she's absolutely beautiful, perfect, amazing human being physically. But she took pictures of herself when she got back on her feet, and she had lost so much weight, it was like scary, super scary to see her thin arms and that stuff. Today she's doing fantastic, so she did take care of it. It was awesome. But she finally called me and told me that this had happened to her, and I'm like, what are you doing? I said, you should have called me. I would have come and picked you up. You could have lived at my house. Like, just relax, you're one of those gold people in the world that we all should protect, And she just was like, how I roll. And I was like, yeah, so don't let that happen again, all right? So then her and I started talking a lot so I could make sure she was on her feet. And we went through a lot of issues that we both mediated, and it all worked out. It was awesome. But she said she got so hungry that she walked into a restaurant and just, in the most feral state that she could possibly be in, she just said, give me food. I am dying. Give me food. Give me a drink. Give me anything. And I think they assisted her because she didn't look threatening or anything. But when I heard that, it really broke my heart that I wasn't able to help somebody I really love, as a friend. But when she told me that, she revealed, that instinct. She goes, look, I wasn't even thinking straight. My creative mind disappeared. My empathy mind and sympathy mind just turned off. I had not enough nutrition in my mind to feed my brain the basics. But what was interesting was our brain functioned at a level to get food. And it's interesting, and it's sort of, I guess you could say, heartwarming to know that our brains are wired so perfectly from our Creator that is the way that we work. We go down to the feral basics of our strategic resources, which are food, to be able to get what we need. Now imagine, some of this defense mechanism thing, thus the proxy to this projection mechanism being very powerful over you, is to be out of sorts. Or the basic instinct of your instincts to survive and make sure that, again, tough guys walking down the street with a dog looks like they eat your mom, don't believe that they can just do that, because maybe there's 2 one day and then 3 one day, and it's just like, wow, we lost control of our neighborhood. Neighborhoods are like that all over the place and in tougher areas, right? If the first kid who hit a corner to sell drugs was immediately detained, and every single time someone tried to take his place, the cops are right there, then it probably would have never manifested. But you know what happens? No one even thinks about that even being the case before they dealt drugs, and nobody thought someone would stand outside selling it. It was like some back door thing, right? So there might be situations where if we don't keep ourselves well fed, well nourished, that, we have the saying, hangry. You're so hungry, you're in a bad mood. I always chalk up hangry to our instincts. And I always go back to a tribal example. How did we used to eat? 200 years ago, this was the case for virtually every American. You went out and you hunted something, and you killed it, and you cleaned it, and you prepared it. Some things you dried out, some things you ate right away. But what does it take to kill an animal? Well, it takes a state of mind, doesn't it? Aside from skills and tools, it takes a state of mind. Like I mentioned in the episode I made yesterday, which I've got so many in the queue now, I don't know which one's going to go out first, so hopefully you've already seen the other episode. It's Evolution 2.0 or Revisited or whatever. They tell these kids, and they've done this for thousands of years, you cannot become a man in this tribe in Africa unless you go out and hunt a male lion by yourself. So the thing with the mane, right, that's big. These things they're little trucks, man. They're big. They're horses, right? But you have to see what you're not going to get as a result of not killing this thing, in order to have the rational thought of like, well, I want to get married. I want to make love to a woman, and I can't have that unless I kill this lion. And so you're going to stand out there until you get it right, or you get killed or eaten alive, right? You imagine all the snowflakes we have today if they had to do that? Unreal. But you're hangry because I think your body is transforming into this more monstrous form, because in the past, just 200 years ago, you're like, I need food, and I'm going to be really monstrous and aggressive until I get that food. And that's going to feed into your abilities to be able to go out there and, you're hungry looking at a boar that if it hits you with its tusk, will set your leg back good 2 or 3 weeks, right? You can't get into water and all this other stuff. It's a bad deal. So it's you against the animal, and you're going to conquer it. And that's where that instinctual thing comes from. So as we realize the black apple's there, and it's going to be there until we acknowledge it, I think, and then you can almost completely separate from it. But if it continues to occur, do me a favor, figure out the science of what state of mind you're in. Are you super happy? Because that's what I run into, is I'm very happy with my life, and I'm open to thoughts, and this negative stuff pops in. I'm just like, whoa. And one good thing about keeping your life happy is that when negativity arrives, boy, it sticks out like a sore thumb. It sticks out like the black sheep. You can immediately go right there. That shouldn't be here. That isn't even me. It's not me. I don't have these kind of thoughts. Get out of here. Boom. I won't let you come in here, devil or demon, and accuse my friends of things that they don't do. Especially my loved ones, my lovers or whatever, right? Boom, you're out of here. And you clean the slate. But now what happens if we're already pretty pissed off at a lot of things, or we're depressed about a lot of things? And they're legitimate things. Well, now the thing's on top of you, and it's just one more flavor. It gets to sneak in another, like all the apples are really dark, but this one just happens to be pure black. But the other ones are pretty dark too. Not the same thing. One of them is an empirical truth about your life. You don't like your job. You're in a weird relationship, whatever. You don't have the kind of money you need to do what you need to do. You had an illness that you don't understand. You can't get it to just go away. You still have to be vigilant, because we don't want to give this mechanism any more ability to rule our lives, right? Now let me digress away from, or lead in from that off to just something that happened to me, which I think I mentioned 3 years ago. Might be valuable to recap it here, because it's one of my own personal experiences, and because it was very atypical of me, this experience, and it lasted, I think I lasted almost a year. I was in a new relationship that was fantastic. My kid was awesome. Lived in a great place. I was making plenty of money. Had every toy in the world, man. I was at a music studio. I was cranking out stuff constantly, doing stuff professionally on the side. So life was good. The problem was my main job that I had taken with the startup, probably my first web startup, okay? It was a cool company, had a lot of great employees, but the sales guy was making my life hell, selling things that didn't exist. When I say they didn't exist, he was selling stuff that didn't exist anywhere on the web. It was 1998. 98, 99, so really towards the end of 98, towards the beginning of 99. Got super, super bad about February 99. And I know because I got my full-time gig at EA finally in April 1st, of all things, 1999. I've been contracting for, I guess 6 years before that. Just doing all kinds of stuff for those folks. And I would just go to work, and it was like, no matter if I finished something, the guy would promise more features that didn't exist. And I was like, who the hell hired this guy? Who is keeping this? And he would determine he would sell the whole thing with a finished and deployment date without ever talking to me. He was completely non-technical. I mean, I appreciate being pushed, but Jesus Christ, this was nuts. He was selling bulletin boards and one-ad bulletin boards that just didn't exist, man. So I would go home at night, and when I went to bed, the only way I could dream about get myself to go to bed and have a dream, I guess just fall asleep is what I'm really trying to say, was that I kept seeing myself jump off the World Trade Centers. And I don't even think about those buildings. I didn't even know they were called World Trade Centers. I just knew there was those two big square buildings in New York. And I would just see myself looking over New York, and I would just jump. And it wasn't me trying to kill myself in any way, shape, or form. It was just that once I do this, that guy doesn't have any control over my life anymore. It was weird, right? And so I was very fortunate that everything else was going really well in my life, and I didn't have to have all this negative projection. But man, had this been on me really heavily in those eras, who knows what I would have believed. I had no mechanism to recognize the difference. So someone tries to say, okay, that's just your id screaming from the inside, freaking you out. Again, maybe. But if I have one tomorrow morning, it will be the weirdest contrast between my overall frequency of life, which is mega positive. I mean, I'm super happy with my life. Super happy with my life. Anything ever happens to me, you can definitely chalk it up to some Epstein thing. So if I have it now, which I have had it in the last, I said I hadn't had it in a while. I had a little one the other day, and I just laughed it off. Getting into my shower, I'm thinking, isn't that funny that would ever present itself? I don't even think about the subject matter of the thing. I can't remember what it was, but it was accusing someone I knew of something, and it was just silly. It was just dumb. So if you think this is something that only happens when you are down and out, I can attest to the opposite. I can also attest that it becomes measurably easier to extinguish this effect on you if you are positive. I mean, if you're in a good state in your life. Now, some of us use fear as a tactic to pay attention and to get what we want. And that's, I think, a very specific thing that you do, that you might be able to cannibalize this negative stuff to give yourself more fear, to motivate yourself. My suggestion is, even though that's a low-hanging, sort of lowbrow technique of getting yourself motivated, let me suggest you don't do that. Always try to fix things through the Tony Robbins technique, which is associate true negativity with all the addictions that you have in life that are ruining your life, that are taking away your life, and try to focus on your goals and see them clearly. Like most people say, try to figure out the steps it takes to get to the next minor goal that is in line with the big goal. And, your life will automatically start getting better the more that things start to occur that are positive, But look at the other thing that Tony Robbins says, which I think is just utterly brilliant, which is your brain will automatically filter out negativity and move away from negativity, and it will always invest in things that are associated with positivity. That's just the way your brain works. How awesome. It's your little gyroscope inside that will always upright you from a negative emotion. But the problem is, that if you're what they call a comfort eater, let's just say, you're becoming obese because food has been falsely classified in your mind as a positive. I try to keep food as non-recreational as possible in my life. And I mean, what I'd like to do is, like, every quarter of a year, go to some restaurant that blows my mind. And then it's like, okay, this is a very special thing. We even save up for this. Reservations sometimes are necessary. And so these positive things occur. But I have friends. I've got one close friend who really struggles with their weight, and they know it. And they've got these sayings. They got the sayings of death. Well, I'm just a comfort eater. Oh, does that make you feel good? Does that make it all go away? Aren't you tired of never being able to run anywhere, of constantly having to buy new clothes because your body gets bigger and bigger and bigger? And this is no exaggeration. And so what that person needs to do is associate with the comfort eating catchphrase that's allowing all this obesity to occur, which is going to eventually, in 20 years, turn into really bad physical problems. Organs will cease to work properly, and you'll start to have all these issues, right? Who wants that, It's also the world's opinion of you. Like I always say, if someone doesn't take care of their temple, then what are they going to take care of outside their own life? And how much are they going to pay attention to it? Now, I know a lot of geniuses that are overweight, but it's always sort of like, well, they're eventually going to expire too soon, Now, some people are built big. I'm not talking about that. The folks that are definitely, when they hit 18 to 25, they were 130 pounds and 5'4", and now they're nearly 250 pounds, and you're like, you're never supposed to be this big. But what the last part of that puzzle is to imagine the beauty of reaching your end goal. Everything in life that'll be better if you get that end goal, and it doesn't matter how crazy the goal is, right? I'm writing films with the hope they'll get sold and made. Is there anything crazier than that? I mean, if you knew how hard it is in Hollywood to sell a script, that's one of the hardest things you can do in the entire world. You gotta be really, really good at your craft to pull that off. Okay, for me, other than physical inabilities, I'm never going to be a lineman in an NFL team. It'll never happen in this lifetime as per the years I've got left. It wouldn't have happened earlier either, but I'm just not big enough. I'm not big enough to do that. I mean, was that guy got his leg snapped the other day in the NFL? I was like, oof. I would be a little tiny twig for these folks, okay? But anyway, If I could get my friend to envision how amazing it is to look in a full-length mirror, fit, and this person's gorgeous, right? It's a female. She's gorgeous, and if she ever got back to like your body matches your face thing, pow, what couldn't you do in life once you rid yourself of that weight? Going through that whole Rubicon of changing your eating habits, see the desserts and all that stuff that makes you fat. See that as the devil. See that as the negativity that it really is. I hate to spoil it with, for you, but like the food industry is obviously trying to make you love everything. Love those Starbucks coffees. Starbucks is the worst fucking coffee on planet Earth. That's why they make it so chocolatey and so whipped creamy, because you're drinking swill underneath this coffee. I mean, underneath all the added stuff to it. They have to dress up this totally acidic acid reflux crap they sell. You can go to other places and it's much better. And then you won't need all that decoration on your food. But they're trying to make you addicted to this. You have to see the movie Branded, which will marry this entire episode beautifully. An alien race, or species that lives on planet Earth, that drives all the brand loyalty in the world, because all it's trying to do is get you to fall in love with your lust for things. And the second you gain the item, the alien breaks off from you and takes that lust bubble you had and gives it to the mothership. It's on point, it's beautiful, and it will change your mind. But inside that movie, like I've said several times, they tried to sell fat to everybody. They literally had a conference room meeting and said, we are going to sell fat. And then they ran all these commercials of these obese kids giving food to each other and being all sexy about it. If obesity was only just a fashion statement and didn't lead to catastrophic organ failure and, starting fires in your jeans down by your thighs, I probably wouldn't have any concern about it. But it is. I see people suffer from it constantly. Suffer from it in ways that I can't even describe on this show. It's too vivid and too gross that these things they have to do on a daily basis. These are people that I know. And so I don't want that for anybody. Why would I want that for anybody? I want you to be totally and completely in control of your brain, of your mind. It is your sovereign place of existence. I want you to get what you want in life. And there's a lot of lessons and a lot of things that may apply to you, and some things I talk about that don't apply to you yet or may never, ever be useful to you. But just having, every tool in the tool shed, well, then you can make anything that you want. You just have the materials and the will. A, envision your goal complete. Envision all the benefits of that goal being completed. Hey, if you want fame, okay, here's the fastest way to get fame. Do something that you love better than anybody else, or at least you're up there at that echelon with everybody else. But because we are artists and human beings at the same exact time, the way you do it's going to be different than the way everyone else does. So even if someone is as talented as you, they're doing a Picasso, you're doing a Salvador Dali. Someone's going to buy your stuff if they like it. I always cite Steve Jobs in these episodes because he made what he loved, and you loved it too. Same with Wozniak. He made a computer that he wanted to use. He made it. Okay. They picked the chips out. They put this thing together. Wozniak wrote the basic for it. That guy was ridiculously brilliant. Be your own Wozniak. Be your own genius. The beautiful thing is like, if I came up to you and said, this is a funny little analogy, but what if I came up to you and said, stop thinking that? What? Whatever's making you smile, stop thinking it. And you're like, why? What are you talking about? Well, I don't want you to be happy. Why don't you want to be happy? Because I'm not happy. No one's allowed to be happy. It's like the Vogon captain. He goes, I've just had an unhappy love affair, so I don't see why anyone else should be having a good time. Hilarious, right? Well, you wouldn't let me, and you'd think I was a jerk, and you'd think what's wrong with me. But we're doing that to ourselves half the time, aren't we? Why can't you dream about your goals in life? Why can't you go get it? Yeah, it'll be hard. But guess what? Anybody who's went up and grabbed a statue off some award ceremony that they respect, it was like Sally Fields, you know. You like me, you really like me. No one should have laughed at her. She's right. That's what she wanted in life. She wanted to be approved of by the world, and she got the award. Now, she was already loved by the world by the time she finished probably her first 2 films. But for whatever reason, she carried that all the way to the 90s when she grabbed the Oscar, I guess it was, and she finally got what she wanted. She wanted that statue. That statue was the definitive moment in her career. Unfortunately, she embarrassed herself a little bit, but again, she was just speaking her mind. We're all thinking it. She just said it. So she gets to be the criminal in the social mores of the world, and we're okay because we never gotten the statue and never had the emotion. Anyway, I think you feel me on this one. Well, these babies are long, aren't they? If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, that's the place to find everything. 2 options for video, 2 options for audio, 2 options for social media. I always stop and say, look, our locked Facebook group is a great place to be. Make sure you get out there. Our membership has actually been extremely low recently, but the views on YouTube have been amazing. If you want to know if we're shadow banned, the answer is absolutely we're shadow banned. Case in point, the show was watched another 350,000 hours. I think we netted 0 subscribers to it. So that's not very common in the world now, is it? So we're not in any organic search. You're going to have to pass these around to your friends. The best way to pass around the show is to find something that's very relative to your conversation. And you can have some fun with it if you go to the website, because there's a search field there. And I did some adjustments to it today, which is going to be really old news by the time this airs. But you get in there, so it looks better on mobile. But you go into the search field, you search. And you search on a subject you're thinking about. You know, if you think I haven't done an episode, search on one of the major keywords of what you're thinking, and boom, you'll find there's already an episode on it. And if I didn't cover something, if you watch an episode and you're like, geez, that was good, but I thought you were going to go a completely different direction, put that in the comments for me, and I'll revisit the subject matter. Again, I just did the evolution one last night. It's because 2 people asked me to do it, and so I know they haven't seen the episode 2, but it is a big subject, and we can lament further about it, right? There's 2 ways to donate to the show monetarily, other than watching them and letting the ads go by. But there's Patreon, which is where everyone is, and there's PayPal in case you don't want to get stuck in some monthly payment thing. Know that the website also contains the remastered Season 1. So even though Season 1 exists on this particular channel, they're heavily copyright infringed things because I played a little bit of people's music at the beginning from my own personal library. So I've cut all that out. And the only place to see those old ones is on this channel. But if you want to see the ones that are all nicely edited, the audio is good, all the pauses are taken out, go to the website or go to BitChute. It has only the new ones. But there is a whole separate channel with, I think, 43 subscribers to it. It'll never receive any more videos, but at least you'll have it in your queue if you want to pass it on to someone, or you're catching up on old episodes. So that contains a little over 100 episodes. Not every single number is out there because some of them I retired because they simply were sort of out of date with what ended up occurring for a particular topic, and that's usually a current affair thing. So anyway, until next time, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you on the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.